The distress beacon had been blinking for 3 days when the evergreen star finally found it. Yuna stood at the observation window, watching the damaged alien ship drift in the darkness of space. It was a Vakari vessel. She could tell by the sharp angles and the black metal that seemed to eat light instead of reflecting it. The ship looked like a predator, even when it was dead. "No life signs," Captain Taiho said from behind her. His voice was tired. They had been flying for 6 months already, delivering supplies to the outer colonies. This was supposed to be a simple job. Whatever happened, it happened weeks ago. Yuna did not look away from the window. "We should still check. It's a Vakari ship, Yuna." She knew what that meant. Everyone in the galaxy knew the Vakari. They came from a death world, a planet where everything was designed to kill. The Vakari were apex predators, the most dangerous species their world had ever created. They stood on 6 legs like massive cats, with fur as black as the space between stars. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth could crush bone. Most species in the galaxy had never seen a Vakari in person and wanted to keep it that way. "They're still people," Yuna said quietly. "If anyone survived, they need help." Taiho was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. "Take Jisoo with you. And bring weapons." The inside of the Vakari ship smelt like death. Yuna had prepared herself for it, but the reality was worse than she had imagined. The adult Vakari lay where they had fallen, their massive bodies twisted in pain. Whatever sickness had taken them, it had worked fast. Jisoo, the ship's medic, scanned the bodies with shaking hands. "Some kind of pathogen," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. It attacked their respiratory system. They suffocated. Yuna looked at the dead aliens. Even in death, they were terrifying. Each one was larger than a tiger from old Earth, with 6 powerful legs and claws that gleamed like knives. Their fur patterns were beautiful in a dangerous way, with bioluminescent markings that still glowed faintly blue and purple. "Is it safe for us?" Yuna asked. "The pathogen is species-specific. It can't hurt humans." Jisoo lowered her scanner. "There's nothing we can do here. We should go." Yuna nodded, but something made her stop. A sound, so quiet she almost missed it. A whimper. She followed the sound through the dark corridors, ignoring Jisoo's nervous calls to come back. The ship was a maze of sharp edges and strange angles, built for creatures that saw in the dark and moved like shadows. Yuna used her flashlight to find her way, stepping over bodies and pushing through doors that no longer worked properly. The sound led her to a small room at the back of the ship. A storage compartment, sealed tight. Yuna pressed her hand against the door controls, and after a moment of resistance, they opened. 3 pairs of eyes stared back at her. They were cubs. Vakari cubs, huddled together in the corner of the compartment. They were small compared to the adults, only reaching Yuna's waist, but they were still predators. Their black fur was matted and dirty. Their bioluminescent markings flickered weakly, like dying stars. They were starving. The largest cub growled at her, a warning sound that came from deep in its chest. But it did not attack. It was too weak, too scared. Behind it, the other 2 cubs pressed against each other, trembling. "Oh," Yuna breathed. "Oh, you poor things." She should have been afraid. These were Vakari, the monsters of the galaxy. Even as cubs, they could probably kill her if they tried. But looking at them, all Yuna could see were children. Orphaned, terrified, alone. She knelt down slowly, making herself smaller, less threatening. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The largest cub growled again, but there was less conviction in it now. The cub was watching her with eyes that glowed like amber in the darkness. Watching and waiting. Yuna reached into her pack and pulled out an emergency ration bar. It was not meat, which was what Vakari usually ate, but it was food. She broke off a piece and held it out. "Here," she said. "Are you hungry?" The cub stared at the food. Then, slowly, it crept forward. Its movements were cautious, ready to run at any moment. When it reached Yuna's hand, it sniffed the ration bar suspiciously. Then, in one quick motion, it snatched the food and retreated to its siblings. The three cubs ate together, tearing the ration bar into pieces and sharing it. They ate like they had not eaten in days, which was probably true. Yuna watched them and made a decision. "I'm taking them with us," she told Jisoo, who had finally caught up and was staring at the cubs with wide, terrified eyes. "You're what?" "They're children, Jisoo. I'm not leaving them here to die." "They're Vakari." "They're orphans." Yuna stood up. Her voice was firm. "Help me get them to our ship." It took 2 hours to coax the cubs out of the storage compartment and onto the Evergreen Star. Yuna led the way, leaving a trail of ration bars for them to follow. The largest cub came first, always staying between Yuna and its siblings, protecting them. The second cub was curious, sniffing at everything, touching the walls with its paws. The third cub stayed in the back, so quiet and shy that Yuna almost forgot it was there. By the time they reached the cargo bay of the Evergreen Star, Yuna had already named them in her head. Bada, the bold one. The protector. Nori, the curious one. Always exploring. Haniel, the shy one. Watching everything from the shadows. Captain Taiho met them in the cargo bay. He looked at the cubs, then at Yuna, and his expression was complicated. "You know what you're doing?" "No," Yuna admitted. "But I'm going to figure it out." Taiho stared at the cubs for a long moment. Bada stared back, her amber eyes meeting his without fear. Finally, the captain shook his head and almost smiled. "They're your responsibility," he said. "Don't make me regret this." That night, Yuna sat in the cargo bay with the cubs around her. They had eaten more ration bars and were now sleeping in a pile, their bodies pressed together for warmth and comfort. Even in sleep, Bada kept one paw over her siblings, protecting them. Yuna reached out and gently touched Bada's fur. It was softer than she expected. The cubs stirred but did not wake. "I've got you," Yuna whispered. "You're safe now. I promise." She did not know how she was going to raise 3 apex predators on a cargo ship. She did not know what the galaxy would think when they saw her with Vakari cubs at her side. She did not know anything, really, except one thing. She was not going to let these children be alone anymore. The first week was chaos. Yuna learned very quickly that Vakari cubs did not understand the concept of doors. On their death world, if something was in your way, you went through it. Bada destroyed 3 door panels before Yuna figured out how to teach her to wait for them to open automatically. "Soft," Yuna said for the 100th time, gently pressing Bada's paw against the door button. "You press soft, see? It opens." Bada made a frustrated sound, something between a growl and a whine. The door had already opened 3 seconds ago. Waiting was hard. Nori was even worse. She was curious about everything, which meant she touched everything, which meant she broke everything. The engineering section became her favorite place to explore, much to the horror of Diane, the young engineer who worked there. "She's in the vents again," Da-hyun shouted over the comm system one morning. "Yuna, please. She's chewing on the power cables." Yuna ran through the ship, following the sounds of happy purring and electrical sparking. She found Nori hanging upside down in an access panel, her jaws wrapped around a thick cable that was definitely important. "Nori, no!" Yuna grabbed the cub and pulled her away from the cable. "That's not food. That's the ship." Nori looked at her with innocent eyes that glowed soft purple. She did not understand the problem. On her home world, if something did not fight back, It was probably food. Not food, Yuna repeated firmly. She pulled a dried meat stick from her pocket and offered it instead. This is food. Nuri sniffed the meat stick, then took it carefully with her teeth. Her tail wagged as she chewed. Dohim watched from a safe distance, his face pale. How are you not dead? He asked Yuna. How are any of us not dead? Yuna smiled tiredly. They're learning. It just takes time. Haniel was the easiest of the three, but also the hardest. She was so quiet and shy that Yuna sometimes forgot she was there. Unlike her siblings, Haniel did not destroy things or explore dangerous places. She just watched. Always watching from the shadows, her amber eyes following Yuna wherever she went. But Haniel was also the most afraid. She flinched at loud sounds. She hid when other crew members walked past. She ate only when Yuna was sitting right next to her. And even then, she ate quickly. Like she expected the food to be taken away. Yuna spent extra time with Haniel, sitting quietly in corners and speaking in soft voices. She learned that Haniel liked to be brushed. The feeling of gentle bristles through her fur made the cub relax, and sometimes, if Yuna was very patient, Haniel would make a sound that was almost like purring. You're safe here, Yuna told her every night. No one is going to hurt you. She did not know if Haniel believed her yet, but she would keep saying it until she did. The real test came when the Evergreen Star docked at a mid-rim trading station for supplies. It was a busy place, full of hundreds of different species from across the galaxy. Yuna needed to leave the ship, but she could not leave the cubs alone. They had already proven they could not be trusted without supervision. They'll come with me, she decided. They need to learn how to be around other people anyway. Jisoo, who had slowly gotten used to the cubs over the past weeks, looked at her like she was crazy. You're going to take 3 Verkari into a crowded station? They'll be fine. We've been practicing. Practicing meant hours of teaching the cubs how to walk calmly, how to keep their claws retracted, how to recognize when other beings were afraid of them. Yuna had worked with each of them, over and over, until they understood the basics. Soft paws, she would say, and the cubs would tuck their claws away. Slow steps, she would say, and they would stop running. Be small, she would say, and they would lower their bodies, trying to look less threatening. They were not perfect, but they were trying. The station was overwhelming for the cubs. So many smells, so many sounds, so many strange creatures walking past. Bada stayed close to Yuna, her body tense and alert. Nuri's head moved constantly, trying to look at everything at once. Haniel pressed against Yuna's legs, almost hiding behind her. Other species stared. Some screamed and ran away. An insectoid trader dropped all of his goods and scrambled up a wall to get away from them. A group of small furry aliens huddled together, trembling. Yuna felt the cubs' confusion. They did not understand why everyone was scared. They were just walking. They were not hunting. They were not even hungry. It's okay, Yuna said quietly, putting her hand on Bada's back. They just don't know you yet. Keep walking. Soft paws, remember? Bada's claws clicked once on the metal floor, then retracted. She was trying so hard. The worst moment came near the food vendors. Haniel, overwhelmed by the crowds and the noise, finally broke. A loud bang from somewhere in the station made her panic, and she did what any frightened predator would do. She pounced. The target was a small insectoid being who had been walking too close. Haniel landed on them, pinning them to the ground. Her claws were out, her teeth were bared, and the insectoid was screaming in pure terror. Haniel, no. Yuna dropped to her knees beside them. Haniel, look at me. Look at me. The cub's wild eyes found Yuna's face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Haniel's claws retracted. Her body relaxed. She stepped off the insectoid and pressed against Yuna, shaking. "I'm sorry," Yuna said to the insectoid, helping them up. She got scared. "She didn't mean to hurt you." The insectoid was too terrified to respond. They just ran away, leaving Yuna alone with the trembling cub. That night, back on the ship, Yuna sat with Haniel in the cargo bay. The cub had not eaten dinner. She had not looked at anyone. She just lay in the corner, her markings dim and sad. "You made a mistake," Yuna said gently. "That's okay. We all make mistakes." Haniel made a small, mournful sound. "The important thing is that you stopped. When I called you, you stopped. You heard me." Yuna reached out and stroked the cub's fur. "That was hard, wasn't it? Fighting your instincts. But you did it." Haniel finally looked at her. Her amber eyes were full of something that looked like shame. "You're not a monster," Yuna said firmly. "You're learning. And I'm so proud of you for trying." She did not know if Haniel understood all the words. But the cub understood something, because she slowly moved closer, pressing her head against Yuna's chest. Yuna wrapped her arms around her and held on tight. In the corner, Bada and Nuri watched. Then, one by one, they came over and joined the pile. 4 bodies pressed together in the quiet cargo bay. A human and 3 predators, finding comfort in each other. They were not perfect. They made mistakes. But they were learning, all of them, how to be a family. And that was enough. Awan Station was the largest trading post in the sector, and today it was more crowded than Yuna had ever seen it. The market stretched across 3 levels of the station, filled with vendors from 100 different worlds. There were food stalls and clothing shops, technology dealers and art sellers. The air smelled like spices and fuel and the strange perfumes of alien flowers. Lights blinked in every color, and voices called out in dozens of languages. Yuna walked through the chaos with 3 Vrakari cubs at her side. It had been 2 months since she had rescued them. 2 months of training, of patience, of endless repetition. The cubs were better now. They understood how to behave in public. They kept their claws retracted and their movements slow. They stayed close to Yuna and did not chase anything, no matter how fast it moved. But they had never seen anything like this market. Bada walked on Yuna's right side, her amber eyes scanning the crowd constantly. She was the protector, always watching for threats. Her body was tense, but she kept her claws hidden. "Good girl." Nuri walked on Yuna's left side, her head turning in every direction. She wanted to touch everything, smell everything, taste everything. But she stayed close, following the rules. Her tail twitched with excitement. Haniel walked behind Yuna, almost hidden in her shadow. The shy cub had come so far, but crowds still scared her. She pressed close to Yuna's legs, her bioluminescent markings flickering nervously. "Stay together," Yuna said softly. "We're just getting supplies." Nice and calm. The cubs understood. They had practiced this many times. But then they reached the fruit stalls. Yuna needed to buy dried provisions for the ship. The fruit vendor had a good selection, and she stopped to look at the options. The cubs stopped with her, sitting obediently at her feet. And then Bada saw the melons. They were big and round and purple, sitting in neat rows on the vendor's table. Bada had never seen anything like them. She stared at the strange objects, her head tilting to one side. Slowly, carefully, she reached out one massive paw and tapped a melon. "Is this food?" she asked. Her voice was rough and growling, the words shaped by a mouth that was not made for speaking Galactic Common. But she spoke. She had learned enough words from Yuna to ask simple questions. The vendor, a small blue being with 4 arms, froze in terror. A Vrakari was touching his produce. A Vrakari was speaking to him. Yuna quickly stepped forward. "Yes, Bada, that's a melon. It's a fruit." You can eat it. Bada sniffed the melon suspiciously. Her nose wrinkled. It not move. Fruit doesn't move. It grows on plants, and then we pick it. How would food if not move? Bada seemed genuinely confused. On her death world, everything moved. Everything fought to survive. Food was something you chased and killed. This purple ball just sat there. It did not run. It did not fight. How could it be food? Nuri had already moved to another part of the stall. She found a bunch of yellow bananas and tapped them gently with her paw. This food? She asked. Yes, those are bananas. Nuri tapped a basket of red berries. This food? Yes. She tapped a decorative plant that was not for sale. Food? No, that's just for decoration. Nuri looked at Yuna with pure confusion. Why have not food that looked like food? Yuna laughed. She could not help it. That's a really good question, actually. By now, a crowd had started to gather. People were watching from a distance, whispering to each other. The whispers spread through the market like ripples in water. Vrokari. There were Vrokari in the market. With a human. Haniel noticed the attention and pressed closer to Yuna. Her markings flickered faster, showing her stress. But she did not run. She did not hide. She stayed with her family. The fruit vendor was still frozen, watching the cubs examine his products. He had not moved since Bada first touched the melon. He looked like he might faint. I'm sorry, Yuna said to him. They've never seen fruit before. They grew up on a world where everything was meat. This is all new to them. The vendor blinked. They've never seen fruit? Never. They don't understand why it doesn't move. Something changed in the vendor's face. The fear was still there, but now there was something else too. Curiosity, maybe. Or wonder. Slowly, he reached under his table and pulled out a container of sliced melon. The pieces were orange and wet with juice. He held the container out toward the cubs, his 4 hands trembling. Would they like to try some? Yuna's heart swelled. This small blue being, terrified of the predators in front of him, was offering them food. Kindness was winning over fear. Nori, Yuna said. Come here. The nice vendor wants to give you something. Nori approached slowly, her purple eyes fixed on the melon slices. She sniffed them carefully. Then, with the gentlest movement she could manage, she took one piece in her mouth. She chewed. Her eyes went wide. The sound that came out of her was not a growl or a whine. It was a purr. A deep, rumbling purr that shook the entire stall. Her bioluminescent markings suddenly blazed bright, pulsing with joy. This is food? Nuri's voice was full of wonder. This is food. She grabbed another piece, then another. Bada pushed forward, wanting to try. Haniel crept closer, curious despite her fear. Yuna bought the entire container of melon slices and sat down right there in the market, feeding pieces to her cubs. They purred so loudly that people could hear it 3 stalls away. The crowd that had gathered in fear now watched in amazement. These were Vrokari, the monsters of the galaxy, the apex predators from a death world. And they were sitting in a market, eating fruit, purring like happy kittens. An old alien with gray scales approached Yuna carefully. How? They asked. How did you do this? Yuna looked at her cubs. Bada was trying to figure out how to peel a banana. Nori had juice running down her chin and did not care. Haniel had found the courage to take a piece of melon directly from the vendor's hand. I just talked to them, Yuna said. I taught them. I showed them that the universe has more than just hunting and killing. She smiled. I showed them that food can be sweet. The old alien stared at her for a long moment. Then they laughed, a dry and scratchy sound. Humans, they said, shaking their head. You are very strange creatures. Thank you, Yuna said. She meant it. By the time they left the market, Yuna had bags full of fruit. Melons and bananas and berries, and things she did not even know the names of. The cubs walked beside her, their bellies full, their markings glowing with contentment. Aniel walked a little taller now. She had taken food from a stranger's hand. She had let people look at her without hiding. It was a small victory, but it mattered. "Did you like the market?" Yuna asked as they walked back to the ship. Bada thought about it. "Too many people," she said finally. "But fruit is good." Nori was still licking juice from her paws. "Want more sweet food," she announced. "Much more." Haniel said nothing, but she pressed against Yuna's leg in a way that felt like agreement. Yuna smiled and put her hand on Haniel's head. "There's a whole galaxy of sweet food out there," she said. "And we're going to try all of it." Behind them, the market buzzed with a new story. The story of 3 predator cubs who had tapped at every fruit, asking if it was food. The story of a human woman who had taught monsters to purr. It was a good story, and it was only beginning. The gray one came 3 days after the market. Yuna first knew something was wrong when the cubs started acting strange. They were restless, pacing around the cargo bay, their ears flat against their heads. Bada kept growling at nothing. Nuri would not eat. Haniel hid in the darkest corner she could find and would not come out. "What's wrong?" Yuna asked them. "What's happening?" Bada looked at her with eyes full of fear. Real fear, the kind that Yuna had never seen in the bull cub before. "Others coming," Bada said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Our kind. They found us." Yuna's blood went cold. She had known this might happen. The Vrakari were a proud species with strict rules about bloodlines and clan membership. Orphan cubs without protection were considered defective. They were either claimed by other clans as servants, or they were killed to prevent weakness from spreading through the species. Yuna had hoped that the vastness of space would hide them. She had been wrong. The Vrakari ship arrived at Hawan Station that evening. It was twice the size of the Evergreen Star, a hunting vessel built for war. The station's security forces did nothing to stop it. Nobody wanted to fight the Vrakari. The hunting party that came aboard the station was led by an ancient male that the others called the Gray One. His fur had faded with age, marked with scars from 100 battles. He walked slowly, but there was nothing weak about him. His eyes were cold and calculating, the eyes of a predator who had never known mercy. 5 hunters walked behind him. Each one was massive, easily twice the size of the cubs. Their claws were fully extended, clicking against the metal floor with each step. Their bioluminescent markings pulsed red, the color of aggression and dominance. Yuna met them in the station's main corridor. She stood alone, a single human woman facing 6 apex predators. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. But she did not run. She did not hide. The cubs were on the Evergreen Star, and she would not let anyone take them. The Gray One stopped in front of her and looked down with ancient, cold eyes. He was so big that Yuna barely reached his chest. His breath smelled like meat and blood. "You have our property," he said. His voice was like gravel scraping against stone. 3 cubs from the destroyed vessel. They belong to the clans now. They belong to themselves, Yuna said. Her voice did not shake. She would not let it shake. "They're not property." The Gray One made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are prey. You do not understand our ways. The cubs are defective. They survived when their clan did not. This is weakness. This must be corrected." "Corrected?" Yuna knew what that word meant. "You mean killed. Or claimed. They could serve a stronger clan if they prove useful." The Gray One's lip curled, showing teeth as long as Yuna's fingers. "But they have been contaminated by you. By your softness. They are probably beyond saving. They are children, Una said. They are scared and alone, and they needed help. I gave them help. That's not contamination. That's basic kindness. Kindness. The gray one spoke the word like it was poison. Kindness is weakness. The universe does not reward kindness. It rewards strength. He stepped closer, looming over Una like a mountain of muscle and claws. Give us the cubs, prey creature, or we will take them. And you will not survive the taking. Behind her, Una heard footsteps. 6 heavy footsteps, moving in a pattern she knew well. She turned and saw the cubs. Bada came first, walking slowly out of the corridor that led to the docking bay. Her fur was standing up, making her look bigger. Her claws were out. Her teeth were bared. Behind her came Nuri, her curious eyes now hard and fierce. And behind Nuri came Haniel, the shy cub who was always afraid. Haniel was not hiding anymore. No, Bada said. Her voice was rough and growling, but clear. You not take us. The gray one stared at the cubs with something that might have been surprise. You speak the prey language. You have truly fallen. She taught us, Nuri said, nodding at Una. She taught us words. She taught us fruit. She taught us soft paws and slow steps. She taught us we are more than hunting, Haniel whispered. It was the most words Una had ever heard her speak at once. The gray one's eyes narrowed. You would choose a prey creature over your own kind? Bada stepped forward, putting herself between the hunters and Una. She was so much smaller than the adults. She was just a cub, facing warriors who had been killing for longer than she had been alive. But she did not back down. She fed us when we were starving, Bada said. She held us when we were scared. She did not have to help us. We were strangers. We were dangerous. But she helped anyway. Bada's amber eyes met the gray one's cold gaze without flinching. She is our clan now. You will not take us. The other 2 cubs moved to stand beside their sister. 3 cubs, facing 6 hunters. The odds were impossible, but they stood together, shoulder to shoulder, ready to fight. Una's eyes burned with tears. She stepped forward and stood with them. A human woman, standing with 3 predator cubs against the monsters of the galaxy. You want them, Una said quietly. You go through me first. The gray one stared at them for a long, silent moment. The hunters behind him shifted, uncertain. They had come expecting weak cubs and a helpless prey creature. They had not expected this. You would die for them, the gray one said slowly. It was not a question. Yes, Una said. And they would die for you. Yes, Bada answered. The gray one was silent. Something changed in his ancient eyes. Not softness, exactly. The Vakari did not do soft. But something like recognition. Something like respect. This is unexpected, he said finally. I have lived many years. I have seen many things. But I have never seen a prey creature earn the loyalty of our kind. He looked at the cubs again, studying them with new eyes. You are not weak, he admitted. Weak cubs would have surrendered. Weak cubs would not have faced us. Whatever she has taught you, it has not made you less than what you are. He turned to his hunters and made a sharp gesture. We leave, Elder? One of the hunters asked, confused. The cubs have chosen their clan. The gray one looked back at Una one last time. It is an unusual clan, but it is a clan nonetheless. They are not without protection. We have no claim here. He began to walk away, his hunters falling in behind him. But at the corridor's edge, he stopped and spoke without turning around. The galaxy will be watching you now, human. What you do with these cubs will change things. For better or worse, it will change things. Then he was gone. Una stood in the corridor, her legs suddenly too weak to hold her. She sat down hard on the floor, shaking. The cubs immediately surrounded her, pressing against her, their purrs rumbling through the air. "You stayed," Yuna whispered. "You stood up for me. You are clan," Bada said simply, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Clan stays together." Nuri licked Yuna's cheek with her rough tongue. "We protect you, like you protect us." Haniel pressed her head against Yuna's chest and said nothing. But her markings glowed warm and bright. Colors that Yuna had learned meant love. They sat together on the cold metal floor of the station. A family that should not have existed, and they held each other until the shaking stopped. Outside the station, the Vrakari hunting ship departed into the stars and across the galaxy. The story of a human woman and 3 predator cubs began to spread. The predator cat cubs followed her to the market. Part 5. The message from Earth came 6 months after the confrontation with the Grey One. Yuan read it 3 times before she believed it was real. The Galactic Council wanted to see her. They wanted to see the cubs. The story of the human woman who had taught Vrakari predators to eat fruit and stand against their own kind had spread across the galaxy. Everyone was talking about it. And now the highest governing body in known space wanted to hear the story from her own mouth. "We're going to Earth," Yuna told the cubs. "My home world." Bada tilted her head. "Earth is where humans come from?" "Yes. It's very different from space. There's sky and trees and oceans. You'll like it, I think." "Does Earth have fruit?" Nuri asked. This was always her most important question about any new place. Yuna laughed. "Earth has more fruit than anywhere else in the galaxy. We invented fruit." Nori's markings blazed with excitement. Even Haniel looked interested. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. The cubs spent most of it pressed against the observation windows, watching the stars go by. They had come so far in 6 months. Bada was calmer now, less quick to growl at strangers. Nori had learned to control her curiosity, to ask before touching instead of just grabbing. Haniel still preferred quiet corners, but she no longer hid from everyone. She had found her courage. Earth's orbital station was enormous, bigger than any place the cubs had ever seen. Thousands of ships came and went every day. Millions of beings from across the galaxy lived and worked there. And today, all of them had stopped to watch the Evergreen Star dock. A human woman named Kira met them at the docking bay. She was a diplomat, she explained, someone who helped different species understand each other. She had been following Yuna's story for months. "What you've done is unprecedented," Kira said as she led them through the station. "No one has ever successfully socialized Vrakari before. Most species don't even try. They assume it's impossible." "They're not impossible," Yuna said. "They're just different." They needed someone to show them there were other ways to live. And that's exactly what we want you to tell the council. The council chamber was a vast circular room at the heart of the station. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in rising tiers, looking down at a central platform. The platform was empty, waiting for them. Yuna walked to the center of the room with the cubs at her side. She could feel thousands of eyes on her, some curious, some afraid, some hostile. Vrakari were not popular in the galaxy. Too many species had lost people to Vrakari hunters over the centuries, but Yuna was not afraid. She had faced the Grey One. She could face this. "Yuna of Earth," the council speaker announced. "You have been called before this body to testify regarding the Vrakari juveniles in your care. The council wishes to understand what has occurred and what it means for relations between species." Yuna took a deep breath. "What would you like to know?" The questions came from all directions. How had she found the cubs? How had she trained them? Were they dangerous? Could they be controlled? What was her purpose? What did she want? Yuna answered every question honestly. She told them about the dead ship and the starving cubs. She told them about teaching soft pause and slow steps. She told them about the market and the fruit and the purring that had shaken the stalls. She told them about the Gray One and the moment when the cubs had chosen her over their own kind. Through it all, the cubs sat beside her, calm and patient. They had practiced this too. They knew how to be still, how to be quiet, how to show that they were not threats. When the questions finally stopped, a council member from a species Una did not recognize spoke up. He was small and blue with many arms, and his voice was cold. "This is a pleasant story," he said. "But what does it prove? These are 3 cubs. 3 out of millions. The Vrikari, as a species, remain dangerous. One human woman teaching a few children to eat fruit does not change that." Una nodded. "You're right. It doesn't change anything by itself. 3 cubs are just 3 cubs." She looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. But what if it's not just 3? What if we could do this for others? Not just Vrikari, but any species that the galaxy has decided is too dangerous to integrate. What if, instead of isolating them or destroying them, we offered them a choice? The chamber was silent. "Humans were predators once too," Una continued. "We hunted. We killed. We fought each other for territory and resources. But we also learned. We learned to farm instead of hunt. We learned to build instead of destroy. We tamed wolves and made them our partners. We found ways to be strong without being cruel." She put her hand on Bada's shoulder. "That's what I taught them. Not to stop being what they are, but to be more than what they are. To have choices their culture never gave them." The council speaker leaned forward. "What are you proposing?" "An integration program. Let humans work with species that other civilizations have given up on. Let us show them there are other ways. Not to control them or change them against their will, but to offer them options." A ripple of murmuring went through the chamber. Some voices were angry. Some were skeptical. But some, Una noticed, were thoughtful. "This is highly irregular," the speaker said. "We would need to discuss it. Vote on it. There are many concerns." "I understand," Una said. "But before you decide, I'd like you to ask one of my cubs a question." The speaker looked uncertain, but nodded. "Very well. Which one?" "Haniel. The shy one." Haniel startled at hearing her name. She looked at Una with wide, nervous eyes. But Una smiled and nodded encouragingly. "It's okay," she said softly. "Just tell them the truth." A council member, the small blue being with many arms, leaned forward. "Very well, Vrikari cub. Why did you stay with this human? Why did you choose her over your own kind?" Haniel was quiet for a long moment. Her markings flickered with stress. Una could see her struggling, fighting the urge to hide, to run, to be invisible. Then Haniel stood up. She stood up straight and tall, taller than Una had ever seen her stand. And she spoke. "She taught me that food can be sweet." Her voice was soft but clear, carrying across the silent chamber. "She taught me that small things are not always prey. She taught me that I can be strong without being cruel." Haniel looked at Una, and her markings glowed warm gold. "She taught me there is more than hunting." The chamber was completely silent. The council members stared at the small predator, who had just spoken with more wisdom than most of them had ever heard from a Vrikari. "She taught me," Haniel said finally, "that I could be loved." Una's tears fell freely now. She did not try to stop them. She pulled Haniel close, and Bada and Nori pressed against them, and they held each other in front of the entire galaxy. The vote took 3 days. In the end, the integration program was approved as a pilot project. Humans would be allowed to work with dangerous species, offering rehabilitation and socialization as alternatives to isolation or extermination. Una was offered the position of leading the program. She accepted on one condition: The cubs stayed with her, always. The years that followed were not easy. There were failures and setbacks, species that could not be reached, individuals who did not want to change. But there were successes too. More cubs from death worlds, given chances they never would have had. More predators learning that strength and gentleness could exist together, and always. At Yuna's side were Bada and Nuri and Haniel. They grew into full adults, massive and beautiful and terrifying to look at. But those who knew them knew the truth. They were gentle. They were kind. They were proof that nothing was impossible. One day, many years later, Yuna walked through a market on a distant station. Beside her padded 3 fully grown Vracari, their black fur gleaming, their markings glowing softly with contentment. Vendors waved hello as they passed. Children of a dozen species ran up to pet the big cats, giggling when rough tongues licked their faces. Bada stopped at a fruit stall. With exquisite care, claws fully retracted, she picked up a melon. A young alien was standing nearby, looking nervous. Bada turned to them and held out the melon. "This is food," she said gently. "Try it. It's sweet." The young alien took the fruit with trembling hands. They took a small bite. Their eyes went wide. Bada purred. And somewhere across the galaxy, another story began.